Hey everyone, and welcome to Evidence Mastery. In healthcare, we're basically swimming in data, right? But the real question is, how can we actually trust it to make these huge, critical decisions? Well, today, we're going to dive into a really powerful framework that is completely changing the game for how we find reliable answers from the data we collect every single day. And a lot of what we're talking about today comes from the Evidence Mastery book series, specifically a fantastic book called Real-World Evidence, Principles and Practice by Dr. Massoud Toussi. We're going to pull out some key ideas from his work to explore one of the most important tools in modern research.
So let's get right to it. Here is the central challenge we're all facing. We have this absolute mountain of real-world data. I'm talking electronic health records, insurance claims, you name it. The potential is just massive. But, and this is the big but, how do you take all that messy, real-world information and turn it into evidence that's as rock-solid and trustworthy as a randomized controlled trial?
Well, think about it like this. On one hand, you've got your RCTs, the gold standard. They give you these super clean answers, but oh my gosh, they are slow, they are crazy expensive, and often they're looking at such a specific group of people you have to wonder if it even applies to real-world patients. Then, on the other hand, you have observational studies. They use all that real-world data, they're way faster, way cheaper, but they are just full of these hidden traps, these biases that can totally send you in the wrong direction. And that right there, that's the evidence gap we've got to close.
So how do we do it? How do we bridge that gap? Well, it takes a whole new way of thinking. It takes a framework that's built to bring the discipline, the rigor of a clinical trial into the messy, chaotic world of real data. And that framework has a name: target trial emulation.
Okay, so what in the world is target trial emulation, or TTE for short? At its heart, it's a design framework. You start by designing the perfect, ideal, hypothetical trial you wish you could run. You map out every little detail. Then, and only then, you go to your real-world data and try to mimic or emulate that ideal trial as closely as you possibly can. That's the core idea.
Now, this is so important to get. TTE is not just another fancy statistical model you plug in. It's not a button you click. It is a complete mind shift in how you approach research. It forces you to be incredibly clear about your question and your design before you even peek at the data. It's all about design first, analysis second.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does this actually work in practice? It really comes down to a super clear two-step process.
First, you put on your architect hat. You design the blueprint. That means you write out a detailed protocol for your perfect target trial: eligibility, treatments, outcomes, the whole shebang. And once that blueprint is ready, you move to step 2, construction. This is where you meticulously build that trial by emulating every single piece of your protocol using the real-world data you have.
And this right here, this is where the magic happens. We're not just grabbing data anymore. We're carefully mapping each part of our ideal trial to the real world. So clinical eligibility criteria, those become specific diagnostic codes. Random assignment, we emulate that with careful statistical adjustments. And maybe most importantly, we define time zero, the moment the clock starts, in exactly the same way for everyone. This transparency is what gives TTE its credibility.
So why go through all this trouble? Why all this intense focus on design? Because traditional observational studies are just littered with hidden traps, what some researchers call self-inflicted injuries, that can lead you to conclusions that are flat out wrong.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think is one of the sneakiest, most common flaws that this whole framework helps us avoid? It's a type of bias that has tanked countless studies in the past.
The answer? It's something called immortal time bias. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, it is. Imagine you start the clock for a patient only when they actually receive a drug. By definition, they had to survive the whole time leading up to that point. That period, before they got the treatment, is immortal time. It gives them an unfair advantage and can make a treatment look way better than it actually is.
And this is where TTE is just brilliant, because the framework forces us to start the clock, our time zero, for every single person at the exact same moment of treatment eligibility. It completely sidesteps the problem. Immortal time bias is eliminated just by the very nature of the design. No gap, no immortal time. Problem solved. Now, this design-first approach isn't just some niche academic idea anymore. It is rapidly gaining traction and is being recognized by major regulatory bodies and scientific journals as a new standard for top-quality observational research.
And this didn't happen overnight. The core concepts were actually being worked on way back in 1986, but things really took off in 2016 with a huge paper on using big data for this.
And just recently, in a major step forward, the Target Guideline was published in a top medical journal, giving everyone a standard playbook for reporting these studies.
This new guideline really raises the bar for transparency. It's pretty much a checklist that says, hey, you have to show all your work, from spelling out your exact question to how you mimicked the trial and even what you couldn't account for. This is a massive step forward for the credibility of real-world evidence as a whole.
All right, let's pull all this together. If there's one single idea to take away from our discussion today, what should it be? It's this. The core principle of target trial emulation is about bringing the strict discipline of trial design to the incredible power of real-world data. It shifts our entire focus from just analyzing the data we happen to have to thoughtfully designing the study we actually need.
So the final question for you is, are you ready to take that next step and really master this and other key concepts in the world of real-world evidence?
Because really, we've just scratched the surface today. If you want to go deeper and truly get a handle on the science, the strategy, and the real-world application of all this, the comprehensive guide is Real-World Evidence, Principles and Practice, and you can find it on Amazon.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and keep mastering the evidence.